Last year, on Christmas Day, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak song marched through the streets of the Indian city of Hyderabad. Armed with lathis, an iron-bound bamboo pole used by police, the uniformed cadres of the RSS paraded to the beating of drums and the blaring of bugles. The column of thousands of men stretched 4 kilometers. It was a grand display of incredible discipline and military precision. But this show of force was special for another reason. All other rallies were banned. Hyderabad is 30% Muslim, more than twice the national average. It has been a stronghold for rallies against the newly passed Citizenship Amendment Act and the proposed National Register of Citizens. Yet, seeking to quash dissent, the government had specifically prohibited public assemblies. The only exception made was for the Hindu Nationalist Paramilitary, the RSS. The RSS is uniformed, armed, and all male. Women are only allowed in the separate women's wing. That's how the paramilitary is structured, with countless special purpose subsidiary organizations springing from the mother organization, the RSS, that gave them birth. The most important of these subsidiaries are the ABVP, the student wing, the VHP, the religious wing, the BJP, the political wing, and the Bajrang Dal, the youth wing of the VHP. Operating under the umbrella term Sangh Parivar, all of these groups, aside from their origins in the RSS, have one thing in common: Hindutva. The U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom calls Hindutva an ideology which holds non-Hindus as foreign to India. Amnesty International says Hindutva is the political ideology of an exclusively Hindu nation. An exclusively Hindu nation is exactly what current Supreme Leader of the RSS, Mohan Bhagwat, insists that India is and should be. Last year was one of the many times that Bhagwat said this. Speaking at an event celebrating the RSS's founding, he declared, "The vision and proclamation of the song regarding the identity of the nation, social identity of all of us, and the identity of the country's nature are clear, well thought of, and firm that India is Hindustan, a Hindu nation." He also said, "I was the RSS chief in 2009 as well, but not so many people were here to listen to me. Today, there are more people because of the growth of the RSS in various sectors. Indeed, the RSS in India has grown, or rather metastasized. Today, I would say that the RSS operates within India as a state within a state. It is essentially a shadow government. However, celebrated novelist Arundhati Roy disagrees with me. No longer a shadow state or a parallel state, it is the state, she recently said. Day by day, we see examples of its control over the media, the police, the intelligence agencies. Worryingly, it appears to exercise considerable influence over the armed forces, too. It has taken decades of quiet, hard work for the RSS to achieve this level of social and political control. For a long time, the paramilitary was busy laboring at the state level. In 2002, for instance, Roy reported how the police, the administration, and the political cadres at every level were systematically penetrated in Gujarat, the state of Gujarat. That, of course, is where Modi first cut his teeth as a BJP politician. It's also where the RSS conducted its first pogrom of the 21st century, which the former leader of the VHP called a successful experiment which will be repeated all over the country. The traditional muscle power of the BJP has always been the RSS, said a former US ambassador to India. Its role is much broader than that, however. Today, the RSS does not just provide boots on the ground to help win elections. It pulls the strings of the party's elected officials. The BJP and the RSS regularly hold joint summits, sometimes spanning several days, to discuss campaign strategies and policy issues. In 2014, 41 members of the central government's cities, in 2014, 41 members of the central government's 66-person cabinet had an RSS background. In 2017, when Modi reshuffled the cabinet, the BJP first held a crucial coordination meeting with the RSS. And today, 38 out of 53 ministers in the cabinet, or 75%, hail from the RSS. That includes the infamous duo of Prime Minister Modi and Home Minister Amit Shah. The two met in 1982 when Modi was 31 and Shah was 17. They became inseparable partners and rose to power through the labors of the RSS. Shah now acts as Modi's lieutenant and is probably his successor. Other RSS members in the cabinet include Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, Transportation Minister Nitin Gadkari, Human Resource Development Minister Ramesh Pokhriyal, who is in charge of education, and Ravi Shankar Prasad, who is not on here, but who is Minister of both Communications as well as Law and Justice in the country. Technically, the RSS today teaches that a Hindu Rashtra, a Hindu nation, is not something to work towards so much as it is merely a given fact of reality. They believe that India is already a Hindu nation. One RSS ideologue recently argued, for instance, that Hindutva is an adjective of the nation, not an objective. And Hindu nation is simply the appropriate way to describe India in geocultural context. Nevertheless, since the Republic of India is technically, officially, a secular democracy, securing the foundations of what the RSS believes is already a Hindu nation does require legislative and judicial action. The BJP generally waited to take such action until Modi was re-elected in May 2019. Since then, though, it has moved with lightning speed to implement the RSS's platform. In 2019, all of the BJP's highest profile and most controversial actions were key items on the RSS agenda. That includes revoking Article 370 of the Indian Constitution, thus scrapping Kashmir of its semi-autonomous status, giving a green light to build Ram Mandir, a Hindu temple, on disputed land in the city of Ayodhya, passing the CAA, which makes religion the basis for acquiring Indian citizenship, and proposing the NRC, which would require that every resident of India prove their citizenship. Since December 2019, the streets of India have been engulfed by mass protests against the CAA and the NRC. Essentially, these are protests against the implementation of the RSS's agenda. Protesters are being viciously suppressed. There are reports of military-style crackdowns in Muslim neighborhoods, with police opening fire on civilians, beating children, barging into homes, and vandalizing property. Police are brutalizing protesters. In some cases, they're even thrashing men and women in the groin, and are even accused of using chemical weapons. Nearly 30 people have died and hundreds have been injured. Yet the protests continue. Meanwhile, as Modi's regime has tried to stamp out the resistance by banning public assemblies, there the RSS was, marching through Hyderabad on Christmas Day, dominating the streets. Violence is the inevitable result of the RSS's domination of the streets. And Over the past few decades, the international community has increasingly acknowledged this. The UN has warned about the militance of Hindu extremists who are attracted to ultranationalism and engage in political exploitation of religion. Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have both warned that escalating violence against religious minorities is carried out by the RSS and its subsidiaries. The US State Department has described the RSS as an extremist group, warning that members have been implicated in incidents of violence and discrimination against Christians and Muslims. The violence in which the RSS and the Hindu nationalist movement it has cultivated is implicated. It includes assassinations, terrorist bombings, and even pogroms against Christians, Muslims, and anyone who stands up against its xenophobic agenda. In 2017, for example, Gauri Lankesh was cut down by the bullets of a Hindu nationalist assassin who was later arrested, gave a confession, and was linked to the murder of 2 other anti-RSS intellectuals. As someone known for calling the RSS a multi-hooded poisonous snake, Lankesh anticipated the risk of assassination. A year before her death, she said, "We are living in such times that Modi devotees and the Hindutva Brigade welcome the killings and celebrate the deaths of those who oppose their ideology, their political party, and their supreme leader, Narendra Modi. Let me assure you, they are keen to somehow shut me up too." Terrorist bombings also figure into the RSS's portfolio of violence. From 2006 to 2008, for instance, a wave of bombings hit Muslim targets throughout India. Hundreds died in the states of Haryana, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, and Telangana. One of the worst incidents was the bombing of the Samjhauta Express, the friendship train running between Pakistan and India. 70 people died. The investigation into the attacks implicated, among others, a full-time RSS worker named Swami Asimanand. In his confession, Asimanand claimed that the violence was directly sanctioned by RSS chief Mohan Bhagwat. The Swami said that Bhagwat agreed that it was necessary to do some violence in the name of Hindus, but instructed him, "Don't link it to the song. If you do it, then people won't say that we committed a crime for the sake of committing a crime. It will be connected to the ideology. This is very important for the Hindus. Please do this. You have our blessings." Anti-minority pogroms are one of the RSS's most tried and trusted tactics. In fact, it is linked to over a dozen such massacres. In 1947, the RSS had penetrated every major area of the subcontinent and boasted up to 500,000 members. The British were leaving, the subcontinent was being partitioned, and the Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir was faced with the choice to join Pakistan or India or remain independent. As he wavered, the chief of the RSS visited to pressure him to join India. His visit followed the launch of a state-sanctioned pogrom, in which the Maharaja's troops joined hands with the RSS to slaughter the Muslims of Jammu. By the end, the total number of dead was catastrophically high. Lowball estimates placed the death toll at 20,000. In 1948, though, the Times of London claimed that 237,000 Muslims were systematically exterminated. In 1969, Gujarat experienced the worst communal riots the country had seen since partition. A few months after the RSS held a 3-day rally in Gujarat, where its chief pleaded for a Hindu nation, sword-wielding mobs of people from the RSS and other Hindu nationalist groups attacked Muslims throughout the state. Officially, over 400 died. Unofficially, the death toll ran as high as 2,000. This was followed by a series of massacres in the 1980s. From 1980 to 1989, riots in Bihar, Gujarat, Maharashtra, and Uttar Pradesh left thousands of people dead, thousands of Muslims dead. The RSS persistently protested its innocence, but witnesses and investigations all implicated the paramilitary. Finally, however, the RSS played its hand openly. The Babri Mosque had stood in the city of Ayodhya in Uttar Pradesh since the early 1500s. In the mid-1980s, however, the VHP launched a campaign to reclaim the ground on which the mosque stood, alleging that it is the location where the Hindu deity Ram was born. Soon, the BJP officially joined the campaign, with party president L.K. Advani leading the charge. In December 1992, hundreds of thousands rallied around the mosque to listen to speeches by Advani and other BJP leaders. Sparked by their fiery rhetoric, the mob surged forward and began demolishing the mosque. Then came the pogroms. Anti-Muslim violence spread throughout northern India and lasted into the new year. The death toll was up to 3,000. In response, the Indian government briefly banned the RSS, the VHP, and the Bajrang Dal. By 1998, however, the BJP rose to national power for the first time, with Advani, the man responsible for this destruction, as deputy prime minister. The BJP still held national power when Narendra Modi was elected as chief minister of Gujarat in February of 2002. 3 days later, the state was engulfed in carnage. A train was set on fire, killing 59 Hindu pilgrims. Modi immediately declared it an act of terrorism and blamed it on Pakistan. His government then transported the charred bodies to the state's capital and handed them over to the VHP. The VHP declared a statewide band, a shutdown. Then, blood began to flow. For 3 days, mobs ran rampage across Gujarat. Over a dozen cities witnessed major incidents of violence. By the end, up to 2,000 or more Muslims lay dead. Eyewitnesses claim that attackers were armed with voter lists naming Muslim targets. Some of the mobs were even led by BJP state legislators, who issued weapons and gave orders. Survivors say that when they appealed to police for help, they were sometimes told, "We have no orders to save you." Witnesses claim that police even fired on the victims. Soon after the violence ended, however, a BJP state minister blew the whistle. He told media that, along with other state and police officials, he was summoned to a meeting at Modi's house the night before the pogrom began. They were ordered to stand down so that mobs could vent their frustration. A senior police officer later corroborated the claim. Still later, a sting by an Indian magazine caught multiple leaders from the RSS, the VHP, and the BJP bragging about their participation in the pogrom and boasting that Modi had given them 3 days to do whatever they wanted to do. One of the most recent anti-minority pogroms occurred in 2008, when a VHP leader was murdered in the state of Odisha. The group blamed the local Christian community. Mobs led by a BJP state legislator began attacking Christian homes, churches, and even orphanages. Around 100 or more Christians were left dead, and tens of thousands were displaced to relief camps. Later, Odisha's chief minister bluntly stated, members of RSS, VHP, and Bajrang Dal were involved in the violence. It's no surprise that the RSS is responsible for shocking violence, considering its ideological ties to European fascism. In 2011, in Norway, white supremacist Anders Breivik murdered 77 people. Breivik's lengthy manifesto details how he was inspired by other extremist and nationalist groups around the globe. Pointing to the RSS, he praised them for how they dominate the streets and often riot and attack Muslims, usually after the Muslims disrespect and degrade Hinduism too much. He admired the RSS so much, saying that our goals are more or less identical, that he called for collaboration with the RSS, writing, "It is essential that we learn from each other and cooperate as much as possible." Breivik's admiration for the RSS is quite natural, considering the correlation between fascism in the West and Hindu nationalism in the East traces all the way back to the paramilitary's origins in the 1920s. The religious nationalist political ideology of Hindutva was first articulated by V.D. Savarkar. V.D. Savarkar, whose brother was one of 5 people who co-founded the RSS. Another co-founder was B.S. Munji. Munji was the mentor of yet another co-founder, K.B. Hedgewar, who was the first supreme leader of the RSS. As these 3 men cultivated the Hindu nationalist movement in India, they took ideological inspiration from and even engaged in direct contact with the rising fascist movements in Italy and Germany. Events moved rapidly in the 1920s and 1930s. In 1921, the year after the Nazi Party was founded, Adolf Hitler became its leader. That same year, in Italy, Benito Mussolini founded the National Fascist Party. In 1922, Mussolini led a largely successful coup in Rome. The following year, Hitler led an unsuccessful coup in Munich, was sent to prison, and began writing Mein Kampf. That same year, Savarkar published his manifesto, Hindutva, in which he was determined to redefine Hindus not as a religious community, but as an ethno-nationalist one, as a Hindu race. Calling for the Indian subcontinent to be turned into an ethno-state of Hindus, for Hindus, and only for Hindus. He laid out a vision for unifying the Hindu race. India must never lose the strength born of national and racial cohesion, he wrote. The Hindu people must be fused and welded into an indivisible whole till our race gets consolidated and strong, sharp as steel. Insisting that common blood is the essence of nationality, he wrote, "We Hindus are all one and a nation because chiefly of our common blood." 2 years later, in 1925, Hitler published Mein Kampf, in which he declared, "What makes a people, or to be more correct, a race, is not language, but blood. Common blood belongs in a common Reich." Obsessed with protecting Germany's national and racial cohesion, he set out to fuse and weld the German people into an indivisible whole. That year, Hitler founded the SS to help keep Germany a nation of Germans. Meanwhile, in India, Hedgewar and his cohorts founded the RSS. Insisting that the subcontinent should be called Hindustan, Hedgewar claimed that the Hindu culture is the life breath of Hindustan, but warned that it was necessary to organize the entire Hindu race, the entire Hindu society, to save the Hindu race from onslaughts by outsiders, claiming that India is a nation of Hindu people. He compared it to a Germany of Germans. Subsequently, in 1931, Hedgevar's mentor, Munji, traveled to Italy to tour Italy's fascist institutions. After meeting with Mussolini, Munji applauded the idea of fascism for bringing out the conception of unity amongst people. He praised the dictator's fascist youth organizations for producing the military regeneration of Italy. He concluded that India, and particularly Hindu India, needs some such institutions for the military regeneration of the Hindus. He noted that our institution of the RSS under Hedgevar is of this kind, and pledged to spend the rest of his life developing and extending it. Upon returning to India, Munji argued that Hindu nationalist leaders there should imitate the youth movement of Germany and the fascist organizations of Italy, stating they are eminently suited for introduction in India, adapting them to suit the special conditions. 2 years later, in 1933, the Nazis came to power in Germany, Hitler was made dictator, and the first concentration camp was constructed. Meanwhile, in India, a British intelligence report warned that the RSS, the Sangh, hopes to be in future India what the fascisti are in Italy and the Nazis are in Germany. Munji's remarks continued to reinforce that conclusion. Independence from the British, he said in 1934, required a Hindu as a dictator like Mussolini or Hitler of the present day in Italy and Germany. The following year, in Germany, Hitler's dictatorship adopted the Nuremberg laws, which required citizens to possess German blood and stripped Jews and others of citizenship. The political persecution of the Jews quickly shifted to physical violence. In 1938, the first Nazi pogrom against the Jews, known as Kristallnacht, or Night of Broken Glass, left nearly 100 dead as tens of thousands of Jews were shipped away to concentration camps. Yet, as the Nazis laid the foundations for the Holocaust, Savarkar looked to them as a model that justified his concept of a Hindu nation. A nation is formed by a majority living therein, he said less than a month before Kristallnacht. What did the Jews do in Germany? They, being in a minority, were driven out. He further claimed that Indian Muslims, like German Jews, were unlikely to assimilate into national life because they allegedly identified themselves and their interests more with Muslims outside India than Hindus who live next door. He concluded, if we Hindus in India grow stronger, in time these Muslims will have to play the part of German Jews. In March 1939, Savarkar expanded upon his admiration for Hitler's regime when his political party offered a lengthy statement in which they proclaimed, in part, Germany's solemn idea, and keep in mind, this is Savarkar's political party speaking, Germany's solemn idea of the revival of the Aryan culture, the glorification of the swastika, her patronage of Vedic learning, and the ardent championship of the tradition of Indo-Germanic civilization are welcomed by the religious and sensible Hindus of India with a jubilant hope. Germany's crusade against the enemies of Aryan culture will bring all Aryan nations of the world to their senses and awaken the Indian Hindus for the restoration of their lost glory. 7 months later, just weeks after World War II began with the Nazi invasion of Poland, Munji complained that the Muslims are making themselves a nuisance and claimed that we shall have to fight them. For that purpose, he suggested the RSS may be useful and handy. Before RSS chief Hedgewar died in 1940, he selected M.S. Golvarkar as his successor. Today, Golvarkar is revered as the guru of the RSS. In the words of Narendra Modi, till the end of his life, from 1940 to 1973, traveling all over India, constantly, Guruji threw himself into his work of expanding the RSS. Golvarkar's ideological influence had already begun in 1939 when, as he was appointed second in command of the RSS, he published the first systematic statement of RSS ideology. Like the other founding fathers of the Hindu nationalist movement, the guru of the RSS explicitly praised the European fascist movements. Denouncing Judaism as an intolerant faith, he wrote, to keep up the purity of the race and its culture, Germany shocked the world by her purging the country of the Semitic races, the Jews. Race pride at its highest has been manifested here. He concluded that Germany had set a good example he concluded that Germany had set a good example by showing how it was supposedly impossible for different races and cultures to be assimilated into one united whole. Thus, he proclaimed that the Nazi policy towards the Jews was a good lesson for us in Hindustan to learn and profit by. He believed that European fascists had demonstrated the right to define nationality by race. He extolled Mussolini's Italy for awakening the old Roman race consciousness of conquering. And he celebrated how the ancient race spirit, which prompted Germanic tribes to overrun the whole of Europe, has re-risen in modern Germany. Even so with us, our race spirit has once again roused itself, he wrote. He insisted that Europe's fascists proved how every race possesses the indisputable right of excommunicating from its nationality all who have turned traitors by entertaining aspirations different from those of the national race. He believed that the national race is the Hindu race, and he claimed that no one but Hindus hold a birthright to Indian citizenship, declaring only the Hindu has been living here as a child of the soil. He claimed that converts away from Hinduism had abandoned the spirit of love and devotion for the nation and succumbed to divided loyalty in place of undivided and absolute loyalty to the nation. Conversion, he claimed, was not merely a case of change of faith, but a change even in national identity. He declared that the only nationalist patriots are those who aspire to glorify the Hindu race and nation. All others were traitors who had joined the camp of the enemy and left their mother nation in the lurch. He claimed that non-Hindus, like Christians and Muslims, were internal threats. Describing them as members of foreign races, he demanded that they give up their present foreign mental complexion and merge in the common stream of our national life. Claiming that they should be stripped of citizenship if they refused to be fused into the Hindu way of life, he wrote, "The foreign races in Hindustan must either adopt the Hindu culture and language, must learn to respect and hold in reverence Hindu religion, must entertain no ideas but those of the glorification of the Hindu race and culture, and must lose their separate existence to merge into the Hindu race, or may stay in the country, wholly subordinated to the Hindu nation, claiming nothing, deserving no privileges, far less any preferential treatment, not even citizens' rights." The current chief of the RSS, Mohan Bhagwat, grew up in a family of RSS activists. His father was a close associate of both Hedgewar and Golwalkar. He himself became a full-time RSS worker just 2 years after Golwalkar's death. In other words, there is a direct historical overlap linking the current RSS chief to the guru of the RSS. In today's information age, however, the RSS is much more cautious about how it publicly articulates its ideology. Gone are the days when its ideologues openly praised European fascists or overtly called non-Hindus traitors and members of foreign races who must be stripped of citizens' rights. Greater awareness and concern for its international image has made the Nazi-inspired paramilitary far more prudent in its public rhetoric. Yet, when Bhagwat speaks to mass RSS rallies, he invariably does so while standing before a huge garlanded photo of Golwalkar. Modi, meanwhile, names Golwalkar as one of his primary inspirations, calling him a gem and a very great man who is his guru worthy of worship. And Amit Shah, the Home Minister of the country and Modi's probable successor, has eulogized Golwalkar as the one who motivated us to serve Mother India. Shah is the driving force behind the CAA, Shah, as the driving force behind the CAA and the NRC, is unique in his willingness to throw caution to the wind and, international reputation be damned, openly employ obviously genocidal rhetoric. Thus, for instance, he has recently described undocumented Muslim immigrants in the country, in India, as infiltrators and termites. Shah believes it is necessary to protect against, to quote the first supreme leader of the RSS, the onslaughts by these outsiders. Thus, it's no surprise that the CAA and the NRC combined are frequently being described as the new Nuremberg laws. One thing is obvious. Under the RSS regime in India today, the fascist vision of the founding fathers of the Hindu nationalist movement is swiftly being implemented with deadly consequences. And the longer that the RSS rules the roost, the deadlier those consequences will be. Thank you.